So I'm excited to bring you guys another video. I know it's been over 3 weeks since I've released a video, and I like to release videos about once a week, but these last several weeks I've been very busy working here on the Peabody Merrimack Valley layout, and so I haven't had time to post running sessions and reviews, and with all the work that I've done on the layout, this is the reason why I've got this video for you guys today. This is episode 14, ready to show you guys all the updates on the layout. So let's go. Okay, starting as we walk into the train room, the first thing you'll see here is my small residential section. This is a area that I've had planned. You can see this brown house. I don't know if I'll be using these houses at this location because I'm also going to be probably putting a couple of houses right here. But I got this brown house. It's a Lionelville house. I got it on eBay for really cheap, so I couldn't pass it up. And then this yellow house I got from my local train store just down the street. So I don't know if you can see, but there's marks here on the pink foam that marks out where the road is gonna be. I'm gonna use Woodland Scenic's pavement system to make the roads, and the road is gonna come down here. I don't know if you can see the incline here. It's gonna cross over the rails, and then in the foreground here where the wood is, there's gonna be a road that goes down the hill over here. Over here, I wanted to break this up. My concern was to make this so that it wasn't so flat. I needed to have a flat area to place the houses, but I didn't want it to look too flat. So what I did to kind of break it up is right here, I'm going to be placing a small wetland with some cattails coming out of the water. And then you can see a little ravine feeding into the wetlands. It's kind of like a drain off for the residential area. So that kind of breaks up the flatness of this area. And there's a little hill here again to break up the flatness. So over here, I'm going to be placing a 1-inch or half-inch thick foam to raise the street up so that when I make this railroad crossing, you can see the plastic. I bought these on eBay. These are the crossings, the road crossings for the track that I'll glue into onto the track for this road that's going to cross the track. But I'm going to raise the road up because Fast Track sits kind of high. So I'm going to raise the road up and make it so that it's level with the base of the road. So the road crossing it'll be a nice transition going over the track. So the road is going to go off in the distance over there, and the road comes down here and it comes down the hill. Here's the other part that I've been working on. This hill, I actually created it from using Micromark, the cardboard strips from Micromark. I used it to create the base of the hill, and then I used plaster wrap on top, and then what you see here is Sculptamold that I put over the plaster wrap. And you can see I stopped putting in the Sculptamold here on the end because I'm going to be putting in some rock formations. I don't know if I'm going to be doing rock molds, or I'm going to try my hand at using plaster Paris. I watched a video on YouTube of a guy that carves rocks out of plaster Paris, and it's you don't really need a lot of tools. You just need an X-Acto knife and a like a small like artist putty knife to kind of spread the plaster Paris, and as it sets and gets harder, you carve into it with the X-Acto knife to make the striations and cracks into the road. I haven't tried it, so I want to practice it and see what I can do. So keep you guys abreast on that. Now the next addition here is I added a 5th Glenn Schneider shelf. So now I've got 5 shelves because my locomotive roster is growing. And some of these engines you have not seen on my new channel here, so I will be doing running sessions on those. I'd like to run my coal turbine here. I did a review on it on my old channel, but for those of you who are not familiar with my old channel, you're not familiar with this locomotive. This engine is really long, and it's got a unique sound. It's a cool engine. And then over here I added more shelving because, again, I've got so many pieces of rolling stock, and I'm always unboxing new rolling stock. And you know, a couple weeks ago I made a review video on some of my pieces of my favorite rolling stock. But the biggest addition to the layout is this. I finally got to build my downtown area. So what I'll do is we will talk about how I created that. When I started building this layout 4 years ago, I knew I wanted to have a downtown area in this spot here, and this is exactly how I wanted it to look. I knew the streets had to be 6 inches wide, with the sidewalks being 1.5 inches wide all the way around. I knew that I wanted the Woodland Scenics buildings, and I knew which ones I wanted, so I went to Woodland Scenics website and grabbed the dimensions of each building. I then made cardboard cutouts of each of the buildings with those dimensions and placed them on the layout to see how it would all fit together. I then made marks on the table where the sidewalks and the streets would go. I then cut out the masonite to those dimensions. I measured from all the lines that I had made where the streets and sidewalks would go. I measured and cut out the masonite for the street and for the sidewalk. Then what I did was on the street level, I spread joint compound where I'd be painting the streets. I also had to test what color gray I wanted, so I bought a couple colors of gray, and I finally found one called Almost Charcoal from Lowe's, and that's the color that I used for the streets. As far as the sidewalks, I'm not going to go into detail about that because I made a video on how I made my sidewalks. So if you guys want to watch that video, you can click on the link on the upper right hand corner of the screen. I then measured where the street lines would go. I had to make sure that they were exactly in the middle, particularly the double yellow line. And what I did was I used a stencil made out of acetate, and I took a sponge that I got from Michaels. I also got the acetate from Michaels, the clear acetate, and I bought the paint, the yellow and the white paint, to make the lines, and I dabbed with the sponge the paint on the stencil to make the lines, the street lines and the crosswalk lines. I'm really happy with the way the lines came out. I think they really look fantastic. Then after I did the lines, I had to make some manhole. I wanted to have some manhole covers on my street. So what I did was I used a Forstner bit, and it wasn't the exact same size as the manhole cover that I got from ScaleCity.com. So I had to use an X-Acto knife to open it up a bit, and that was real tedious. I had to cut into the joint compound with an X-Acto knife to get it the right size so that the manhole cover would be flush with the street. I did all this before I glued the masonite down to the layout on the table because I knew it would be easier to do it off the table instead of me having to do it by leaning over into the middle. It would have been really difficult to do all the lines in the manhole covers. I also, before I glued down the masonite, I used the weathering powders from Bragdon Enterprises. And Bragdon Enterprises makes some nice weathering powders, and I used like a dark brown color, and I made a brown stripe down the middle of each lane to kind of give the road more of a realistic look to it. It's very, very faint. You probably can't see it from this shot here, but I'm happy with how that came out. So what I did was, after I did all that, I glued down the street, and I used liquid nails and had to weigh it down. And interesting enough, I used my 3985 as one of my weights to weigh the street down. Then once that dried, I glued down the sidewalk, and I was careful exactly where I had placed it, because I had marks on the street where the sidewalk would go, and I weighed that down. Then after all that was in place, I went ahead and drilled holes where the buildings would go, and I ran the wiring for the buildings through those holes down below. And I'm using Woodland Scenic's Just Plug lighting system, and I connected those wires into the light hubs, and the light hubs connected into an expansion hub. I then drilled the holes for the street lights, and what ended up happening was I couldn't place some of the street lights exactly where I wanted them, because where I wanted them was where the frame of the table was, and I wouldn't be able to get a hole all the way through the frame, through the table, and through the frame of the table. So I had to move some of the lights over to avoid that, putting a hole where the frame was, so the hole would just go through the actual plywood of the table. So the street lights are not exactly perfectly in the middle as I hoped they would be. That was a disappointing thing, but I'm pretty happy with how they came out, where they're located. I tried to make them as even as possible. So putting in the lights was the street lights was a very tedious thing. The wires that come off of these Woodland Scenic street lights are very, very small, and you had to twist two of them together. There's a black and a gray wire for each street light. You take two of the street lights, you take two of the blacks from two of the street lights and two of the grays and twist them together. Then you plug them into their linker plug that's included, and then you plug the wire on the other side of the linker plug. There's a thicker gray and black wire that plugs into the linker plug, and then one end goes into the light hub. And so it was very tedious to connect these wires into the linker plugs. The wires are so delicate. Sometimes the wire ends would break, and I'd have to take the sheathing off, the plastic off, to expose more wire. And you can't just put the wire through a wire stripper, because it's so small that it wouldn't do anything. The holes on the wire stripper are too big. So I would take an X-Acto knife and very gently scrape off the sheathing, the plastic covering of the wire, to expose more of the wire. So that was very tedious, and my hands are not the steadiest, and so to twist the wires together and place them into the linker plug was a bit of a challenge. But I got it done, and I'm really happy. All the lights work, so I'm happy about that. So I've got some clips here that will give you a better look at the downtown area with the lights on, and the overhead lights off, with the buildings lit up and the street lights lit up. coming around the other side of the hill that I showed you in the beginning of the video. This is the, you can see I only put on the plaster wrap and I haven't put on the Sculptamold yet, but you can see the Micromark cardboard strips underneath on this hill. Again, I'll probably be putting some, some rock molds in here, some rock formations here. And then in the foreground here, I want a hill to come down and make another rock face on this side over here facing the track, but I want to work on this side first, obviously, and then I'll work right here, create a hill there. This is the back side of the residential area. You can kind of see the lines that I talked about before where the street's going to go. Then really the last thing to talk about is retaining walls. So I'm kind of tired of looking at all this wood here, and I'm anxious to put in some retaining walls. And what I did was I went on Bragdon Enterprises website and bought this mold here. And you can buy the foam retaining walls from places like Scenic Express, but it gets really expensive, especially if you're doing a span that goes all the way down. It would cost quite a bit of money to buy all the foam pieces from Woodland Scenics. So what I decided to do was buy this mold, and what I'm using is Ultracal that I bought on Amazon. I've seen people use them on their layouts on YouTube, and it cost me about $45 plus. I think it was I'm an Amazon Prime member, so I think it was just $45 for this bag of Ultracal, and I mix it and I pour it here in the mold, and every time I work on the trains I make a new wall, and by the time I come back it's dry and I take it out of the mold. So I've got 5 pieces of this retaining wall. This retaining wall here is finished and ready to be glued in. What you see at the bottom is the 1/2-inch thick foam that I have. I cut a little strip out to kind of bump the wall up, because the wall is only 6 inches high and I wanted to reach the top of the upper level. So to raise it up, I cut out this pink strip here that's going to hold the wall up, and I'll probably use the liquid nails to glue it in place. And then I'll cover it over with ground cover, rocks, debris, so you won't even see the pink. So, and what I do with these walls is that when you put them together, you have to make sure the sides are flush against each other. So the sides of the mold here kind of bow out a little bit. So what I do is I take a belt sander and I sand the sides here with the belt sander to make it flush and make it flat. And I put what I know is going to be the next wall that'll be right next to it. I sand both sides of it that are going to be touching and make sure that they're flush together, so you don't see too much of a gap between the walls. So I'm pretty happy with the way this wall looks. I'll probably put in some vines eventually to break up the gray with the rock pattern. I'll put in some vines to break it up, give it some color. So I'm also working on that. That will eventually, the wall will go all the way down. So as far as updates, this is all the updates I have for the layout. Enough of me rambling. I'm going to be hopefully focusing on making more videos now. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this layout update. And until next time, be safe, take care, and we'll see you next time.